Silent Predator. The void of space held no judgment for Commander Elena Reyes as she studied the holographic display floating before her command chair. Only silence surrounded the UES Phantom, humanity's most advanced stealth vessel, as it drifted at the edge of the Epsilon Tauri system. The ship's revolutionary quantum damping field generator had been operating at 93% efficiency for the past 7 days, rendering them effectively invisible to the alien armada gathering around the contested world of New Horizon. Status report, Elena whispered, though there was no practical need for silence in the vacuum of space. Old habits from submarine service died hard. Lieutenant Commander Jackson looked up from his console, the blue glow highlighting the exhaustion etched into his features. Heat sinks at 78% capacity, Commander. We'll need to vent within 20 hours or risk system damage. Elena nodded. 20 hours was more than enough time. Tactical. Targeting solutions calculated for all 18 primary vessels, replied Weapons Officer Chen, her fingers dancing across her holographic interface with practiced precision. Quantum torpedoes primed and missile tubes loaded. Point defense grid online but dormant. The Phantom represented humanity's response to the Valorian threat, a threat that had emerged 17 months ago when the aliens destroyed an unarmed human research vessel without warning or attempt at communication. The diplomatic mission sent afterward had barely escaped with their lives, bringing back only fragments of information about the aggressors. The Valorians were a bipedal species with 4 arms and iridescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Their technology was impressive. Energy weapons that could slice through conventional armor like paper, shields that could deflect most projectiles, and faster-than-light drives that allowed them to appear virtually anywhere within their sphere of influence. But they had never encountered humans before. Elena's gaze moved across the tactical display where the alien fleet gathered around New Horizon. Intelligence suggested they were preparing for a major offensive against the remaining human colonies in the sector. If New Horizon fell, Earth itself would be vulnerable within months. Science Officer Patel. Analysis of the Valorian command vessel. Patel, a brilliant astrophysicist who had joined the military after losing her family in the attack on Europa Station, studied her readings intently. It's approximately 2.5 kilometers in length, Commander. Energy outputs suggest they're operating at full capacity with no attempts at concealment. Their shield grid is active, but not at maximum power. They don't expect to find us here, Elena murmured. They have no idea what's coming. The UES Phantom was unlike any vessel humanity had constructed before, a warship built not just for combat, but for hunting. Its hull was composed of metamaterials that absorbed rather than reflected sensor pulses. Its engines were designed to disperse heat across a wide area, making thermal detection nearly impossible. And its weapons had been specifically calibrated to exploit the weaknesses in Valorian defensive systems that had been identified in previous engagements. But most importantly, the Phantom carried the prototype Hawking Drive, a revolutionary system that allowed the ship to effectively hide in the space between normal space and subspace. The energy requirements were immense, and they couldn't fire weapons while it was active, but it made them completely undetectable until the moment they chose to strike. Communications, any transmissions between their vessels? Elena asked. Communications Officer Rivera nodded. Constant chatter, standard encryption patterns. They're discussing final preparations for their assault on the colony. No indication they're aware of our presence. Elena took a deep breath. The Phantom was humanity's best hope, a vessel designed to even the odds against a technologically superior opponent. This would be its first true combat test, and the fate of billions might rest on the outcome. Navigation. Plot an approach vector that keeps us in the shadow of the system's third planet until the final approach. Tactical. I want firing solutions for their command ship and their 3 largest support vessels. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, each officer completely focused on their tasks. These were the best Earth had to offer, selected not just for their skills, but for their psychological profiles. Each had lost someone to the Valorian aggression. Each understood what was at stake. As the Phantom began its silent approach, Alina thought about the Valorian commander. Did they have any concept of what humanity was truly capable of? Did they understand what happened when you cornered a species that had spent its entire history preparing for the worst? The massive gas giant loomed ahead, its swirling storms providing perfect cover as they approached. The heat sinks were now at 81% capacity, still manageable, but time was becoming a factor. "All hands to battle stations," Alina ordered, her voice calm and measured. Throughout the vessel, 400 crew members prepared for combat, each one moving to their designated positions with practiced efficiency. "Weapons, prepare to fire on my mark." The Phantom slipped around the curve of the gas giant, and for the first time, the human warship had a direct line of sight to the alien fleet. Dozens of Valorian vessels hung in formation, oblivious to the harbinger of destruction that had emerged from the darkness. "Target locked," Chen confirmed. Alina took one last look at the tactical display. The aliens had no idea what was about to hit them. They had never faced a species like humanity before, a species forged through thousands of years of conflict, innovation, and the relentless drive to survive against all odds. "Disengage Hawking drive. Fire." The Phantom surged back into normal space, its quantum damping field disengaging as power redirected to weapon systems. Before the Valorians could even register the sudden appearance of the human warship, the first salvo of quantum torpedoes streaked across the void. Designed to create localized subspace distortions upon detonation, they bypassed traditional shields entirely. The torpedoes struck the Valorian command ship with devastating precision. Space itself seemed to warp around the impact points, the very fabric of reality twisting as portions of the massive vessel were essentially removed from normal space. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull as systems overloaded and failed. The alien fleet seemed to freeze in confusion as their flagship erupted in silent explosions. Their tight formation broke apart in what appeared to be panic, some vessels accelerating toward the threat, while others turned to flee. "Second volley, fire," Alina ordered, and another barrage of advanced weaponry streaked across space, claiming 2 more Valorian ships. The human vessel's main railgun array activated, accelerating depleted uranium shells to a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy alone was enough to pierce the weakened shields of the alien vessels, tearing through their hulls like tissue paper. Now the aliens were responding, their own weapons charging as strange energy signatures bloomed across their fleet. They had been caught completely off guard, their defensive formation now working against them as they struggled to reorient toward the unexpected threat. "Incoming fire," Tactical warned as the first alien energy weapons discharged toward the Phantom. "Evasive maneuvers. Pattern Delta," Alina called, gripping the arms of her command chair as the ship accelerated into a series of pre-programmed evasive actions. Several alien energy beams missed entirely, while others glanced off the Phantom's advanced armor at oblique angles. One direct hit landed, and the bridge shuddered in response. "Damage report," Alina demanded. "Minimal damage to outer hull sections," Jackson reported, relief evident in his voice. "Their weapons aren't as effective against our armor composition as intelligence suggested." Alina allowed herself a small, grim smile. The Phantom's hull incorporated elements of the same technology that allowed the Hawking drive to function, dispersing energy attacks across subspace rather than absorbing them directly. "Launch an IRV missiles, full spread," she ordered. Multiple independently chargeable reentry vehicles, a technology humanity had developed for nuclear weapons centuries ago, erupted from the Phantom's launch tubes. Each missile split into dozens of smaller projectiles, some armed with conventional warheads, others with EMP generators, and still others merely decoys designed to confuse enemy targeting systems. The space between the human warship and the alien fleet became a chaos of explosions, false readings, and destruction. 5 more Valorian vessels succumbed to the barrage, breaking apart in spectacular fashion. The remaining ships were now fully engaged, returning fire with increasing coordination, but their initial disarray had cost them dearly. As the battle intensified, Elena could almost sense the alien commander's shock and confusion through the tactical display. The Valorians had clearly expected another easy victory against an inferior opponent. Instead, they had found themselves under attack by a vessel that seemed specifically designed to counter their technology and tactics. They're attempting to regroup, Tactical reported, as the surviving Valorian ships maneuvered to form a new defensive pattern. Elena nodded. Good. That means they're afraid. For the first time since the Valorians had appeared in human space, they were on the defensive. For the first time, they were the ones being hunted. And as the Phantom accelerated toward the heart of their formation, weapons blazing, Elena knew that this day would change everything. The message would be clear. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. We would not surrender our worlds without a fight. And if the Valorians wanted to continue this war, they would pay for every inch of space with their blood or whatever it was that flowed through their alien veins. The bridge shuddered again as another volley of alien weapons found their mark. Warning lights flashed, but the Phantom pressed on, unleashing hell upon the invaders who had underestimated humanity's capacity for warfare. The real battle was just beginning. Turning the tide. Another impact rocked the Phantom, this one more substantial than the last. The lighting on the bridge flickered momentarily before emergency systems compensated. Direct hit to port weapons array, Jackson called out, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. Sections 7 through 9 reporting damage. Automated systems containing hull breaches. Elena nodded grimly. The Valorians were adapting faster than expected. Their initial confusion had given way to a more coordinated response. The element of surprise was fading. Bring us about heading 047 Mark 32, she ordered. Let's not give them a stationary target. Lieutenant Chen, focus fire on their flanking vessels. They are trying to surround us. The massive human warship banked in space, its maneuvering thrusters firing in calculated bursts. For a vessel of its size, the Phantom moved with surprising agility, a testament to the engineering teams that had labored over her design. Commander, we're picking up unusual energy readings from 3 of their support ships. Science Officer Paddle reported, her brow furrowed as she analyzed the incoming data. They appear to be channeling power away from weapons and toward something else. Specifics, Officer, Elena demanded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. Unknown, Commander, but the energy signature resembles what we saw at Proxima Station before. Patil's voice trailed off, but everyone on the bridge knew what she meant. Before the station was reduced to atomic particles by some kind of Valorian superweapon. Elena felt a cold knot form in her stomach. The Phantom was humanity's most advanced warship, but there were still unknowns when it came to Valorian technology. Some of their capabilities remained beyond human understanding. Time to intercept for those energy buildups. At current charge rates, approximately 3 minutes, Paddle responded. Elena made a quick calculation. Not enough time to take out all 3 vessels before they deployed whatever they were charging. Chen, focus all firepower on the lead support ship. Communications, send an emergency burst transmission to Fleet Command. Include all our sensor data on these energy signatures. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, each member understanding that they might be the last line of defense for humanity's outer colonies. If the Phantom failed here, the path to Earth would lie wide open. As railgun fire and quantum torpedoes streaked toward the targeted Valorian vessel, Elena thought back to the first reports of alien contact. She had been stationed on Luna then, overseeing security for the research outposts. The initial messages had been confused, fragmented tales of strange ships appearing at the edge of colonized space, ignoring all attempts at communication. When the first attacks came, humanity had been woefully unprepared. The Valorians struck without warning or apparent motive, obliterating outposts and research stations with surgical precision. The few survivors spoke of ships that moved like living things, weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics, and a complete absence of mercy. In the 17 months since, Humanity had scrambled to respond. Old warships were recommissioned, new ones rushed into production. The Phantom had been nearly complete when the attacks began, the first of a new class of deep space combat vessels designed to project human military power into the furthest reaches of colonized space. Instead, she had become the tip of the spear in humanity's desperate defense. Target hit, Chen announced as their concentrated barrage finally overwhelmed the Valorian ship's defenses. The alien vessel shuddered under the impact of multiple quantum torpedoes, then seemed to fold in on itself as secondary explosions ripped through its hull. Enemy vessel neutralized. One down. Elena acknowledged. Redirect fire tow. Her order was cut short as the bridge rocked violently. Warning klaxons blared as damage reports flooded in from across the ship. Multiple impacts on starboard side. Jackson shouted over the noise. They've adapted their targeting algorithms. Our evasive patterns have been compromised. Elena gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered again. Engineering. Status report. Chief Engineer Takahashi's voice came through with noticeable strain. Main power grid holding at 76%, Commander. We've lost 2 heat sink arrays and primary weapons control on the starboard side. Switching to secondaries now. We can keep fighting, but not indefinitely. The tactical display showed the remaining Valorian ships regrouping, forming a new attack pattern that seemed specifically designed to exploit the Phantom's damaged sections. Their initial panic had been replaced by something that looked disturbingly like strategy. Those other 2 support ships are still building energy, Patil warned. 20 seconds to whatever they're planning. Elena studied the display, mind racing through options. The Phantom was powerful, but not invincible. They had bloodied the Valorians' nose, destroyed their command ship and several support vessels, but the aliens were adapting with alarming speed. New contacts. Rivera suddenly called from communications, multiple signatures entering the system at high velocity. Elena felt her heart sink. Reinforcements. The Valorians must have called for help when the attack began. The Phantom was formidable, but even she couldn't stand against 2 fleets. On screen, she ordered, preparing herself for the worst. The main view screen shifted to show a cluster of ships emerging from what appeared to be small localized distortions in space, the telltale signature of human jump drives. Leading the formation was a vessel nearly as large as the Phantom, its hull bearing the distinctive profile of an Artemis-class carrier. IF confirmed, Rivera reported, unable to keep the relief from his voice. It's the UEA's Artemis and her battle group. They're hailing us. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Put them through. The face of Admiral William Zhao appeared on the communication screen, his weathered features set in a grim expression that softened slightly when he saw Elena. Looks like you started the party without us, Commander Reyes, he said. Fleet Command received your earlier updates and decided you could use some company. The 7th Fleet is at your disposal. Your timing is impeccable, Admiral, Elena replied. We have multiple hostile contacts and 2 charging what appears to be a superweapon. Transmitting tactical data now. Zhao nodded, his expression hardening again as he received the information. Understood. Artemis Battle Group will engage the main formation. Your orders are to take out those superweapons before they deploy. With pleasure, sir, Elena acknowledged. As the transmission ended, she turned to her crew, noting the renewed determination in their eyes. You heard the Admiral. Let's finish what we started. The Phantom swung around, engines flaring as it accelerated toward the remaining Valorian support ships. Behind them, the human reinforcements engaged the alien fleet, space lighting up with weapons fire and explosions. Elena watched as the tactical display updated with new information. The battle was far from over, but for the first time since the Valorians had appeared in human space, they were facing an enemy that could match their ferocity, an enemy fighting for its very survival. And if there was one thing humanity's bloody history had taught them, it was how to survive against all odds. Incoming fire, Jackson shouted as the Phantom barreled toward the Valorian support ships. Multiple energy beams lanced out from the alien vessels, scoring glancing hits along the human warship's hull. "Evasive pattern Epsilon 3, Alina ordered. "Chen, target their primary weapon nodes." "Paddle, what's the status on that energy buildup?" 10 seconds to critical," Paddle responded, her eyes locked on her console. "Energy signatures are becoming increasingly unstable. Whatever they're planning, it's bigger than what we saw at Proxima Station." The Phantom shuddered as another volley struck home. Warning lights flashed across multiple stations, but the massive vessel pushed forward, its own weapons returning fire with devastating effect. Railgun rounds tore through the alien ship's outer defenses, while quantum torpedoes targeted their critical systems. The first Valorian support ship erupted in a spectacular display of secondary explosions, its energy buildup dissipating harmlessly into space. But the second vessel was still active, its weapon nearly charged. 5 seconds, Patel warned. Alina made a split-second decision. Navigation, set collision course for the remaining support ship. Engineering, prepare to engage Hawking Drive on my mark. "Commander," Jackson questioned, concern evident in his voice. "We can't let that weapon fire," Alina replied firmly. "If it's anything like what hit Proxima, half the fleet will be gone in an instant." The Phantom accelerated directly toward the Valorian vessel, all weapons firing in a desperate attempt to destroy it before the superweapon deployed. The alien ship began to glow with an eerie blue light as the energy buildup reached its peak. 3 seconds. "All hands brace for impact," Alina ordered. "Engineering, Hawking Drive now." The Phantom's revolutionary drive engaged, the ship half-shifting into subspace just as it collided with the Valorian vessel. The resulting explosion was unlike anything humanity had witnessed before, a cascading failure as the alien superweapon's energy was redirected into subspace by the Phantom's drive. The shockwave rippled through both normal space and subspace, temporarily disrupting all sensors in the vicinity. When the tactical displays finally cleared, both the Valorian support ship and the UES Phantom were gone, leaving only a slowly expanding field of debris. On the bridge of the UES Artemis, Admiral Zhao watched in stunned silence as the sensor readings confirmed what his eyes had already told him. The Phantom was gone, sacrificed to save the fleet. But as he turned his attention back to the battle, he realized that something had changed. The remaining Valorian ships were in disarray, their coordinated attack patterns dissolving into individual vessels fleeing in all directions. "They're retreating, sir," his tactical officer reported, confusion evident in her voice. "All Valorian vessels are breaking off engagement and jumping to FTL." Zhao nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "They've never seen anything like this before," he said quietly. "Their first true defeat. And more importantly, they've never encountered an enemy willing to sacrifice themselves so completely." The battle for the Epsilon Tauri system was over, but the war was just beginning. Yet something fundamental had changed. The Valorians had entered this conflict believing humans to be technologically inferior and easily conquered. Now they knew differently. Now they understood that humanity would fight with every weapon, every strategy, and every ounce of determination at their disposal. They had learned that humans were not merely technologically advanced, but tactically innovative and willing to die for their cause. In the moments before the Phantom was lost, the Valorians had glimpsed the true nature of their enemy, a species that had clawed its way to the stars through thousands of years of conflict, innovation, and sacrifice, a species that would never surrender, never give up, and never stop fighting so long as a single human drew breath. And for the first time since they had encountered humanity, the Valorians knew fear. 6 months later, at the neutral meeting ground established on Ta City IV, the first diplomatic delegation from the Valorian collective sat across from representatives of the United Earth government. The alien skin rippled with shades of blue and green, colors that human xenobiologists had come to recognize as indicating caution and respect. The lead Valorian diplomat placed a data crystal on the table between them. "We have reviewed your historical records," it said through the translation matrix. "In all our explorations, we have never encountered a species with your unique development path." The human ambassador nodded. "We evolved on a challenging world in constant competition with ourselves and our environment. It made us what we are." "Indeed," the Valorian replied, its skin shifting to a deeper blue. "We have transmitted orders to all our forces to withdraw from contested systems. We propose a formal cessation of hostilities and the establishment of permanent borders." The terms that followed were more favorable than anyone in the human delegation had dared hope for. The Valorians were not surrendering, but they were clearly no longer interested in pressing their advantage against humanity. As the negotiations concluded, the Valorian diplomat paused before departing. "There is a question our conclave wishes answered," it said. "The vessel that first engaged our fleet at Epsilon Tauri, was it representative of your military capabilities, or was it exceptional?" The human ambassador smiled thinly. "The UEA's Phantom was merely the first of its class," she replied. "We have since commissioned 12 more." It wasn't true. The Phantom had been a prototype, and humanity lacked the resources to build even one more vessel of its caliber in the near future. But the diplomat had been instructed to say exactly this if asked. The Valorian's skin flashed briefly with a pattern of pale yellow, a color humans had not observed before settling back to a respectful blue. "Then we look forward to a long and peaceful relationship between our peoples," it said, and departed without another word. Sometimes, the human ambassador reflected as she watched the aliens leave, the most effective weapon in humanity's arsenal was not technology or tactics, but the reputation we had earned across thousands of years of warfare with ourselves. The Valorians had looked upon a human warship and glimpsed the full potential of a species born in conflict, and having seen it, they had chosen peace.